and welcome to the Flourishing Introvert Talks with me, Jo Rawbone. This is the podcast that celebrates the natural gifts of introverts so that we can flourish in all situations.
Episode 164, The Drivers of Personal Change. Over the past few weeks, I've noticed something of a polarizing effect when it comes to introverts engaging in personal development. I'm talking about the type of development that would enable introverts with more to offer to access their untapped potential. This paves the way for the authentic leaders we so need in today's business world. So how is it polarizing? For some, their response to my invitation is very definitely, leave me alone, I'm happy here in my shell, avoiding as much as I can of humanity. For others, they know they have hit a bit of a wall and are struggling to progress through the ranks without having to sacrifice who they really are. These are the ones I often refer to as the ambitious but blocked introverts who know that they have not reached their potential just yet. So this week, I thought I'd spend some time exploring what would move the needle on where you really want to be in life. Hang on a little minute, I hear you say. What needle and where? No one mentioned a needle. The phrase move the needle or move the dial is often used in the context of personal development or self-improvement, and although I know you're not in any doubt, it means to make progress or to create change in a particular area of one's life. So it's a metaphorical gauge or measurement of progress, with moving the needle indicating a positive shift or improvement in a particular area. And of course, the needle doesn't move on the dial by itself, it moves as the result of purposeful action. So, creative heads on now. Your dial is your dial, and it may not look like anyone else's. And because I'm at a certain age and can be quite literal, my dial is like an old-fashioned round gauge, the type that runs from full to empty or cold to hot, that kind of thing. The words at either end of my gauge are invisible through to impactful, and I have little figures with facial expressions that capture what I'll feel like at each point. You see, I know that the work I'm doing has to be impactful. Bias doesn't disappear on its own. Female introverts don't step forward as leaders without the right beliefs, support and encouragement. And that's where I come in. Part of my mission is to enable more female leaders who identify as introverts to step up, as we need more role models of how leadership could be done from a more inclusive perspective. Just imagine this for a moment. Better listening, more situational humility, more compassion, less spin, and greater psychological safety. Doesn't that sound like a better place to work? Now, I know that I need to balance that with the fact that not all extroverted leaders or male leaders are ineffective, but also the presumption that they are better is also a nonsense. So I wonder what your dial will look like. Clearly it starts with knowing where you want to be and what you want the future to hold for you. Then, in order to move the needle on the dial, so create positive change in our lives, we need to think about relevant actions. I've spoken so many times about my dislike of forced goals and my love of aligned intentions. Yes, I know it seems pedantic when I say it like that, but you know what? Until I can feel it and see it, yes, in that order for me, as I'm more kinesthetic than visual, it's just words. At this stage in your career, you may well have a pretty good idea of how to envision your future. And if not, let's talk. Because leaving it to chance, or worse still, in the hands of someone else, is unlikely to have you end up where you're feeling really fulfilled. Envisioning the future is always the first step of any of my big programs, and previous participants tell me that they go back to that visioning piece we did together many times when they're on their flourishing journey. Why? Because it holds real power. Now, as you probably know, I don't focus on building business skills for entrepreneurs. There are lots of great people doing that already. I focus on the skills and behaviours needed to take your next big, bold move in your corporate role. That said, there are many skills and behaviours that apply in both situations and in life, come to that. And let's be clear, the behaviour and skills I'm talking about are far from the soft skills that they're often badged as. These interpersonal, management and leadership skills are, in my experience, some of the toughest to master. And there's an obvious reason why. It's because we're interacting with other humans who can be unpredictable and sometimes contrarian. So I can completely understand why some introverts reject personal or professional development. I literally lost count of all the times I was advised to be something I wasn't in order to get a promotion. And for a few decades, I complied. I towed the line and bent myself out of shape. So for others like me, the thought of personal development can leave them cold and uninspired, assuming it's going to be more of the, be more extroverted narrative. Not with me, though. That's not what flourishing as an introvert is about. For me, personal development is as essential as breathing. I can't imagine ever thinking, that's it, I'm done. There's no more developing that I need to do personally or professionally. And I know I'm a bit different, partly because I got hooked on personal development in my early 20s. That happened when I won a place on a Women into Leadership programme sponsored by ESSO and the Industrial Society, and I'm not sure the Industrial Society even exists anymore. Anyway, I was hooked and remain hooked to this day, and it served me well and enabled me to do a lot of work on myself. As a result, my introversion doesn't hold me back. I don't see it as a hindrance. I can see it as the gift that it really is. And yes, I acknowledge that we live in a world that favours the extrovert ideal, but I'm not colluding with that. I'm not pretending any longer, and you don't have to either. There are some introverts who shy away from personal development and professional development, come to that, fearing it will be too intrusive or worrying that they'll be pushed down that be more extroverted route. Personal development done right, tailored to the individual, facilitated by professionals, is very different. Because I know that introverts like me prefer to work alone or in small groups, I have both of those options available when people are ready to move the needle on their dial. Over time, what I have recognised is that there are only a few things that apply to most of us, regardless of our dial and regardless of where the needle is. But these things that apply to most of us include assertiveness. This starts with understanding what assertiveness is and isn't. It's not about being aggressive. It's about standing up for your rights and needs whilst respecting the rights and needs of others. So it's a beautiful win-win process that involves listening, compromise and collaboration. And it starts with knowing what your rights are, the ones you're prepared to stand up for. You see, there's nothing aggressive about that. It also gives you the language and attitude to install and maintain your boundaries, something we've talked about before, because so many introverts are not good at boundary management. The second thing that applies to many of us is confidence. I have to say that this makes assertiveness so much easier, but again is misunderstood. You know I'm a big fan of Dr. Rob Jung's definition, where he says confidence is the ability to take appropriate and effective action in spite of how challenging it may feel at the time. So confidence comes from doing, not from waiting until you feel confident. It means you're aware of what you find challenging and you develop the techniques to handle those challenges. Just think back to the competence zone and learning edge that I talked about a few weeks ago. So confidence is situational and we can learn to cope with the situations. The third thing that's common for many of us is visibility. This is often a toughie for introverts who prefer to fly somewhat below the radar. But remember, we're not talking about big showy off visibility here. We're talking about powerful presence that gets you noticed for the right reasons and respected for your contribution. If you have untapped potential, if you feel unfulfilled in life and work, if you have big dreams or a purpose to deliver, you'll need to stop playing small and step into your virtual spotlight. And having delivered from the TEDx stage, I can tell you that the red circle and the spotlight is nowhere near as scary as you think it is. These 3 areas help with so many things that you might have to get involved with as you move up the corporate ladder. And for some, these are significant drivers of change. They include chairing meetings, delivering presentations, networking, delivering actionable feedback, holding town halls, sharing your compelling vision, negotiating, influencing, recruiting, managing projects, stakeholder management, and the list goes on. And it's why we always cover these 3 essential areas on our major courses. Unfulfilled to Flourishing is about to launch bigger and better than previous versions, because we focus on continual improvement and we take feedback and suggestions seriously here at Flourishing Introverts. Because we understand how overwhelming development like this can be for introverts, we take things one step at a time, with lots of support and guidance, plus plenty of time to embed the learning. In conclusion now, if you felt the polarizing effect when personal development has been mentioned, think again. Not all development courses are the same, and not all trainers and facilitators understand what makes us tick. So examine and understand the drivers of change for you. You'll know what's important, whether it's to pursue a passion, provide for your family, benefit from a better work-life balance, prove a point, take the pressure off your partner, shift the balance of power, or demonstrate responsible leadership. Whatever it is, your drivers matter and are the cause of action. Don't allow them to be relegated or denied. They matter, as do you. I'm really championing the rise of the introverted leader here, and I'd love you to accept my invitation to step into your power. So check out the Unfulfilled to Flourishing program. I'll make sure the link is in the show notes. If you accept my invitation to step into your power, know that you're doing it for yourself and also for those around you who maybe already look up to you.
If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, then please subscribe, rate us and leave a comment, because we know that that helps other people find the podcast. And if other people find us, other introverts can flourish.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.